morning. Welcome you to very specially this morning to our university. This program will start in a few minutes. For those of us that have been here for a while, we thank you for your patience. Thank you for having taken our time from your very busy schedule to be with us this morning. Thank you so much for coming. Please, we just want to appeal to you to please be a little bit more patient. You've already exercised that very admirable virtue of patience. So please just bear with us for a few more minutes and then we will start this very program this morning. Once again, I welcome you all, but I must tell you that looking at all of you from this very vintage point of mine, that you are looking very beautiful, you are looking very pretty, you are looking very handsome. I see some of the men frowning their faces and I said beautiful and pretty and I didn't say handsome. And of course, you are looking like blessed people. We're blessed. Already, we are being graced with the wonderful smile of Professor Christy Okoye already. Yeah, you can't miss that smile. Mama, you're welcome, man. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll be with you. We'll come back. At the time you hear my voice again is to formally start this very wonderful seminar put together by the Center of Gender for Gender Studies of this great university, Africa Most Sought After University, best university in Nigeria, the University of Benin. If you are visiting us or visiting this university for the first time, you are welcome. If you didn't attend the university, not to worry. I understand postgraduate forms are on right now. Please just go take the postgraduate forms and then come in here and then to be a part of this wonderful institution, this great citadel of learning, the University of Benin. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. One more time, you are all welcome.
with us at the Center for Gender Studies. And every one of them have worked tirelessly to make sure this program is achieved. One of them is Professor Sylvia Osemina of Institute of Public and Healing, Ekewan Campus. We also have Professor Egakona, who is the Sustainable Development Desk Officer and Director of Part-Time Studies. We have Professor Mwango of Ophthalmology Department. We have Dr. Mrs. Okobia of Faculty of Education. And we have men also, because I'm talking like, the MC is one of our ad hoc staff who also work with the center. I want to recognize one of our senior professors here present, Professor Femike of the Institute of Education. We also have Professor Benaura Edosa. Professor Pute is hiding far behind, and so many people. I want to thank you all for coming. It is my sincere wish that you enjoy this seminar and that you will take away valuable information and become an ambassador of gender participation for sustainable development. Thank you and God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please let's put our hands together one more time for the convener, Director, Center for Gender Studies, Professor Evelyn Edosoma. Thank you. I'm already a convert. Yeah, the first convert for today. At this time, we want to, please, there's going to be a slight adjustment in the program if you have a copy. The item number 8 will come before item number 6. That is the address by the Vice Chancellor and declaration of the seminar open will come immediately after the Chairman Management Committee's address. Please take note of that. It is on these notes that I respectfully and humbly welcome to give her address the Chairman Management Committee Center for Gender Studies, the University of Benin, Professor O.T. Edema.
Good morning. I implore you to allow me to stand on the existing protocol. The first thing is to begin to actually appreciate all who have come from far and from wide to honor us on a day such as this. And just like the Director of Center for Gender Studies has already said, we actually truly appreciate our chief host, the Vice Chancellor of this university, ably represented by the DVC academic, Professor Pius Irigbobe. We truly and sincerely appreciate the chairman, Her Excellency Mrs. Betsy Obatseki, ably represented by Mrs. E.U. Atibie, Deputy Speaker, Edo State. And honestly, if you want to go on, I think we will just stay here for today. But in fact, all of our faces are beautiful. We appreciate you all. But before I sit down, I must actually honor even the Director of Gender Studies in this university, Professor E.U. Edosoma. She has been like a younger sister to me. We have worked together very beautifully. And since that, I appreciate everybody who is on this committee. When I came into this place, then I found that I have a new set of brothers and sisters in the university. Thank you very much. You are all specially welcome to the 2017 annual seminar of the Center for Gender Studies of the University of Benin. Today, by the grace of God, we have very experienced and powerful speakers in our midst. They have already been introduced, and I'm sure they will yet be introduced. The term gender refers to economic, social, and cultural attributes and opportunities associated with being male or female. Just like my predecessor said, it's not all about women. And since 2003, it has been said that opportunities that are associated with being male and female are to be highlighted, even in all nations of the world. It comprises of qualitative and interdependent characteristics of the position of men and women in the society. On the other hand, sex refers to the biological state of being male or female. The advent of the Second World War paved the way for the conversation on gender, as men returned from the war only to realize that women had been equipped to perform the jobs that were predominated by the male man. Did you hear me? Male man, because there's also female man. This sparked the revolution through the remainder of the 20th century into the 21st on the question of gender. And when we talk of sustainable development, the concept of sustainable development can be traced back to 1972, when governments met in Sweden for the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment to deliberate on the rights of the human family to a healthy and productive environment. 11 years later, the United Nations created the World Commission on the Environment and Development, which defines sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future generations. You know that these days people do many things, they do not think of the future generations. But sustainable development has to do with not only today, but also ensuring that the future generations do not suffer. And at the dawn of the new millennium, 191 United Nations member states and 22 international organizations came together create the Millennium Development Goals. However, even though these goals were so wonderful, and even though the thought of these goals actually was to promote gender equality and empower women, by 2011 it was discovered that we're not going to be able to make it by 2015. But thank God for Colombia. Colombia actually was the first to bring up the issue of the Sustainable Development Goals. And so many other meetings were held, especially the one in Germany in 2012, the one in Rio also in 2012. And by the end of this, it was said that there is a future that we want, a future that everybody must work towards. And so on the 25th of September 2015, these same 194 countries of the United Nations General Assembly adopted the 2030 Development Agenda titled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And among the goals of this agenda is goal number 5, which again highlights gender equality and that women and girls should be particularly empowered. We now know that actually the reason why we're here today is to celebrate that goal number 5. To talk to ourselves, to enlighten ourselves, to enlighten our minds, so that we go as ambassadors from here, telling everybody that there's something like gender equality and that women and girls particularly need to be empowered. You go to my own area of ophthalmology, we discovered over the years of research that women have more eye problems, but they are the least, or they are the less that actually come forward. Why? Just like my predecessor said, the people are caring more for the fathers than for the mothers. But as we begin to educate ourselves, all these things will change. And so, I implore all of us to sit back, relax, take notes, because our speakers are armed with mental grenades to blow up our minds and change our perspectives towards gender participation for sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the chairman of the Management Committee for Center for Gender Studies, Professor O.T. Edema. Please let's put our hands together one time. She raised some very important points, but my job here today is just master of ceremony, so not to take up on any of those issues at all. I'll leave that one for Professor Okonofa to handle later, because it's very, very capable. They take care of more of men. You are the ones that do your moguls. And when you go for a mogul, you just go there and relax and do everything. And we the men become married bachelors because nobody to cook for us, nobody to do anything for us. All that time you are away. But oh, sorry, my job is MC. I'm not to take up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Let's put our hands together for ourselves one more time. Permit me to recognize especially the dean of the Faculty of Life Sciences, Professor Mrs. Onaiwo Enabulu. Madam Dean, you're welcome. Sometimes those that are very close to you are the ones you fail to recognize in functions like this. And that's talking about my sister, my friend, Dr. Mrs. Ibni Umemezia. Also, the director of Semicon, this great university, Professor of Chemistry, Professor Ogbefu. And of course, last but most certainly not the least for these rounds of introduction, it's the Director of Internal Audit, Mrs. F. Obey. Madam Auditor, you are welcome, ma'am. And I will now hand over the microphone to my colleague, Tracy, to please handle the next aspect of this seminar. Tracy.
Thank you, Prof. We'll be hearing that gender is not only about women, but this hall is packed filled 70% with women. Gender. May I now respectfully call on the Vice Chancellor of this great university, Professor Farade Osase, a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, represented here on this occasion by the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic, Professor Pius Iruobe, for his speech.
Chairman of this occasion, First Lady of Edo State, Mrs. Betsy Obaseki, ably represented by the Deputy Speaker of Edo State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Elizabeth Atizi, the Registrar of the University, representative of the Boursa, Mrs. Ojanero, representative of the Librarian, Mrs. Esther Isa, the Chairman, Management Committee, Center for Gender Studies, Professor O.T. Edema, Director, Center for Gender Studies, Professor Uwa Edosowan, our resource person, Professor Remy Sunaya, Professor Friday Okonofa, and Mrs. Venera Zakharova, Professor Lilian Salami, DG of NIPED, Professor Union Debiri, Deans and Directors, members of Senate, staff and students of this great university, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to have the privilege of reading the address of Vice Chancellor Professor F.F.O. Rumensi, fellow Nigerian Society of Engineers, on this occasion. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all our distinguished guests to the University of Benin on this auspicious occasion of the annual seminar of the Center for Gender Studies. The theme of this year's seminar is gender participation for sustainable development. Let me specially recognize and welcome our amiable, knowledgeable, and very experienced resource person, Professor Remy Sunaya, Professor Friday Okonofa, and Ms. Venera Zakharova, who will be doing great justice to the topic at hand. They have also contributed immensely in various ways to gender sensitivity in our society. This program is suitable, practical, and germane for the fact that the developing countries are opening up to gender sensitivity, which will enhance development of the society at large. The Center for Gender Studies is a center of excellence in the academic and intervention activities that contribute significantly to gender equality and equity within the university community and the society in general. The society has held counseling sessions, conferences, seminars, workshops, and also published journals in its efforts geared toward a holistic development. I will not fail to acknowledge and appreciate the efforts of the director and the entire team at the Center for Gender Studies of the University of Benin for their ingenuity and excellence with which they discharge their duties. With support from this administration, under my watch as Vice Chancellor, the Center has witnessed tremendous transformation which has been impactful on everyone. I must not fail to commend the organizers of this program for excellent job in putting a program of this magnitude together. I urge everyone to participate actively, benefit from the lecture that will be given here today, and be sure to put it into practice. It is with great honor that I now declare the Center for Gender Studies 2017 seminar open. Thank you and God bless you all.
Can we have another round of applause for the Vice Chancellor, Professor Sasser Farado, Fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, for declaring this event open. We'd now like to entertain the remarks from our special guest of honor, Barrister Idoleyi A. Egoma, here represented by Professor Union Edebiri.
So that is why I'm here. I will also say, I'm pleased to represent him. I will also say that I'm very delighted to be here because one of the resource persons here, Mrs. Shonaya, was my student many years ago in the University of Ife. I imagine how proud I would have been if all the women in this country had voted for her to be president some 2 years ago. So I'm very proud of you and I'm very happy to be here today. Now I want to read the message I was asked to deliver. Please permit me to adore. I must confess that I'm really delighted to be here today. For me, I count it a very great honor to be invited to this great occasion as a special guest of honor. I want to congratulate the Vice Chancellor, Chairman and members, Management Committee, Director and staff of the Center for Gender Studies for putting together this colloquium. The theme of the seminar, Gender Participation for Sustainable Development, is very apt. It would not have come up for discussion at a better time than now. Our nation is passing through a trying time. As such, this calls for all hands to be on deck towards revamping our economy. I have no doubt in my mind that with the crop of scholars assembled to address these topics, a greater awareness will be created and some solutions will be provided to enable our country to rise from its present predicament and provide jobs for men, women, and our teeny youth. For sustainable development to be achieved, men and women must contribute their quotas. Nigeria has a gender policy that focuses on women empowerment and also eliminating discriminating practices that are harmful to women. However, these practices are not being mainstreamed and implemented. Discriminating practices, violence against women, and gender stereotypes hinder progress towards gender equality and sustainable development. Ladies and gentlemen, let me appreciate the convener and organizers of this program. Let us encourage them in whatever way possible in order for them to be able to create more awareness on contemporary gender issues so as to bring about a better life for the people of this great nation. Thank you very much and God bless.
May we put our hands together again for Professor Union Edebury, representing our special guest for today, Barrister Andrew Idoneyi Egoma. We'll now also take a remark from Her Excellency, the First Lady of Edo State, Mrs. Betsy Obaseki, here represented today by Right Honorable Chief Mrs. Elizabeth Onyebe Atibie, Deputy Speaker, Edo State House of Assembly.
The Vice Chancellor of the University of Benin, our principal officers here present, resource persons here present, special guests of honor, distinguished persons of today, lecturers, staff and students, gentlemen of the press. I try to see what I can do about the protocol. I welcome all of you. This is the speech of the First Lady of Edo State. The First Lady of Edo State takes gender issues very seriously, dear to her heart. She wished to be here today, but she is right now outside the country. And she called to say, I have to be here personally to represent her. That shows how dear she holds this seminar to her heart. And she has instructed that I should remain here till the end of the seminar. So so that I can carry every message that took place in this seminar to her. And she doesn't want to miss any part of it. So you can see how dear gender issues are to her heart. So I'll go straight to read her message. It is with great delight to be in the midst of professors, academicians, and very distinguished personalities in this year's Gender Study Seminar. I'm particularly very impressed with the tireless effort of the Center at creating awareness and enlightening the people on the subject matter, gender. Where gender borders on male and female. But for me, the most underdeveloped, underrated, underprivileged gender is the female. So the issue of gender studies has become very popular due to the widening equality between the men and the women. The widening inequality has subjected the females to become inferior to their male counterparts. But in the holy law, God created them equal and mandated them to work together to replenish and develop the earth. The need, therefore, to continue to narrow the inequality gap through seminars of this nature cannot be overemphasized. I'm very pleased to inform everyone present here that His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Edo State, Governor Godwin Obaseki, is more than ever determined to ensure that more women are engaged in the decision-making process in his administration. At the moment, several women have been appointed as commissioners, special advisors, senior special assistant, and special assistant. His vision is to meet the 35% affirmative action. I think it deserves a higher applause. But this is the first time the First Lady can boldly say this is what her husband is doing. And for us on the field, it's happening. The office of the First Lady is equally looking forward to encouraging more women to participate in future elective and appointing positions in the state. Well, the MC just said a few minutes ago that if all the women in Nigeria had voted for our sister, what a wonderful president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria that we would have had. But I say to MC and to all men, even women that have been making us, that we'll get there one day. The First Lady has launched several projects, such as Edo Women for Agriculture, Widows Empowerment, Youth Empowerment, and she even led the women of Edo State to the House of Assembly recently to support the Violence Against Persons Bill that is on the floor of the House. I think she deserves a round of applause for those actions. Looking at the topic to be treated and the caliber of speakers, I'm very convinced that all participants will have more than enough lessons to learn and also to take home. The Office of the First Lady will partner with you, that is the Center for Gender Studies, to continue to ensure gender equality and sustainable development in our states. In conclusion, I wish the Center a very fruitful, robust, and impactful seminar. Thank you and God bless.
Please, another
Thank you.
round of applause.
The director has earlier said that I'm here in dual capacity. This is the message of Her Excellency. So I will pause. As the seminar goes on, I will also make my impact in the seminar. From my life as a politician, is a study book for the Center for Gender Studies. Being the only woman in the House of 24 members for the past 10 years. It is not a joke, and it's not a child's play. And so as we go on, I begin to chip in into things. Thank you.
I think you deserve a good round of applause. Thank you very much. We want to welcome you to this place, Mrs. Helen Edo-Sage, and all representatives of the faculties on the Center for Gender Studies Board and Committees. You're all welcome. We appreciate you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's all put our hands together one more time for Right Honorable Chief Mrs. Atibie. Having been in the House of Assembly in the midst of gentlemen all these years, I think I can change her sex from woman to woman. I should die women. Just you alone. Please, she deserves another round of applause. Want to very specially recognize Deaconess Bubemi Choko. She's here in the house. Madam, you're welcome. Also, Dr. Osaini Olubo, Ophthalmology Department, welcome. Dr. D.U. Waneri, representing Director, Institute of Child Health. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, Dr. Mrs. J.A. Adabire, Women in Academics, AAU. Madam, thank you so much. Also, very quickly, as I had said it earlier, sometimes those that are very close to you, you tend to just keep your mind. Mrs. Olonsaye, she's here. Madam, you're welcome. And of course, the National Auditor, University of Benin Alumni Association Worldwide, Mr. Benjamin Omere, is also here. Welcome. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and I have the singular honor to invite, to treat us to this very wonderful and beautifully crafted topic: attitudinal change towards achieving sustainable development in nation building. A professor, foreign languages of the University of Ife, presidential candidate, COA party in the 2015 presidential election. Ladies and gentlemen, our lead speaker for today, Professor Remi Sonaya. Please let's welcome her.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would like to stand on the protocol. Thank you very much. I would like to thank God for the opportunity to be here. I also like to thank the Center for Gender Studies for inviting me. I am always happy to come to the University of Benin. So thank you, and thank you for your patience. I believe that one of the areas that we will have to work on, especially as Africans, in terms of sustainable development, might have to be in the management
time. My topic, let me confess this, that I just had cataract surgery. So I might not look at you as much as I should because, you know, looking at my paper, looking at you puts a lot of strain on the eyes. So that's the reason if you notice that I'm behaving funny. God bless you. My topic is attitudinal change towards achieving sustainable development in nation building. When President Muhammadu Buhari, during a state visit to Germany on the 14th of October 2016, made his infamous statement that his wife Aisha, and I quote, belongs to my kitchen, my living room, and the other room. Many of us felt that it was a sad moment for Africa in general, and for Nigeria in particular, almost confirming once again the justness of referring to Africa as the dark continent. And not just because of the skin color of the vast majority of its inhabitants. That proclamation, captured live on various international television networks, was equally a true reflection of the prevailing level of awareness concerning gender issues, even among leaders whose countries had for decades been signatories to various charters and agreements focusing on women's and human rights. As is the case with Nigeria, the saddest part of President Buhari's faux pas was the fact that he uttered that statement while standing next to Mrs. Angela Merkel, arguably the world's most powerful and influential woman, and the leader of a country as important as Germany. Even in the presence of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. That is, here was a woman who was anything but what he was painting his own wife to be. Deeply ingrained attitudes could not be easily discarded. Sure, the President Buhari could have argued that he was talking about his own wife in particular, and that his utterance was not to be taken as a general categorization of women. Would that then be sufficient grounds to overlook the seriousness of the issue? Not in the least. The fact, and this is crucial, is that it is not mere coincidence that it is precisely in those places where attitudes such as our president's prevail, and more importantly, among the leaders of such places, that we equally find the worst global indices in terms of social development. Abject poverty among the majority of the population, a very low standard of education, early marriage of the girl child, high infant and maternal mortality rates, poor health services, lack of basic infrastructure, generally poor governance. That is, there is a high and significant correlation between a low perception of women and their role in society on the one hand, and a general low standard of living for the overwhelming majority of the population on the other. In other words, there is overwhelming evidence to support the assertion that countries where women are relegated to the background or largely discountenanced are usually poor, undeveloped countries. The important question to be addressed in this lecture, therefore, is the following. How are nations built or developed? And here is the answer which I will offer. Only when every single citizen is recognized as an intrinsically worthy component of the overall unit which the nation represents, and consequently is treated with equal respect and dignity, and enjoys equal opportunities for self-actualization. One could therefore state my hypothesis in the following manner, and it's very simple. A just society is a prosperous society. So let us instead address some very specific issues, focusing on those attitudes that are unfortunately still so rampant within our society and which are keeping us from attaining the quality of life which should be ours, considering the incredible resources, both human and natural, with which our nation is blessed. In an article titled Beijing Declaration and Women's Property Rights in Nigeria, published in the December 2014 volume of the European Scientific Journal, Sheriff Folari and Oluwakemi Udo situate the matter for us center stage. And I quote, "There exists a plethora of human rights instruments at the international, regional, and domestic levels. Nigeria is a signatory to some of those documents, notably the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, CEDAW, the Beijing Declaration and Plan of Action, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and so on. Put differently, Nigeria has signed and ratified these documents. Also at the national level, the Nigerian Constitution makes provisions for the protection of women's rights. However, I'm still quoting that. However, women are still faced with a number of challenges arising from the pervading influence of ignorance, poverty, and illiteracy. End of quotation. Thus, at the official or even institutional level, Nigeria has assented to protocols to ensure that the rights of everyone, including women, are respected, and forbidding discrimination based on gender. However, between official documents and our lived reality, there exists a great chasm defined by entrenched attitudes, as demonstrated unfortunately by our president. Now I go on to the tyranny of an unquestioning attitude. The following quote is credited to Oprah Winfrey, the billionaire African-American show host. She said, "The greatest discovery of all time is that a person can change his future by merely changing his attitude." A person can change his future by merely changing his attitude. I think that is powerful. If true, if that is true, and I believe it is, then it means that nobody ever needs to feel totally helpless or hopeless in the world. Stories abound down through the ages, recounting incredible feats performed by people simply because of their positive attitude. Boldness in the face of challenges or danger is an attitude. Feeling compelled to stand and resist any form of oppression and injustice is an attitude. Refusing to accept defeat is an attitude. Constantly striving for improvement, especially for the benefit of others, is an attitude. We all can easily fix names to the few categories I have just mentioned. That is the stuff that inventors, explorers, freedom fighters, great political leaders, and revolutionaries are made of. For me, some of the names that easily come to mind are Moremi of Ile-Ife, that woman who saved her town. Ken Saro-Wiwa, Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama, yes we can. And even Bella and Nicolas. But then the reverse is also true. Inability or refusal to transcend personal interest is an attitude. Love of money and power is an attitude. Inordinate ambition that does not balk at trampling on others for one's personal advancement is an attitude. Fear of taking risks is an attitude. Taking advantage of the poor, the weak, and the vulnerable is an attitude. Accepting that things are the way they are and nobody can do anything about it is an attitude. And so on. We can also affix names to this category, certainly. However, if we reflect on the matter carefully and honestly enough, we will find that somewhere on the list we draw our own names without their The organizers of this event must have been inspired in arriving at the topic for this lecture, associating the need for attitudinal change to the challenge for sustainable development in our nation, and I always like to add, in Africa as a whole. For if we are honest and examine our situation objectively, we will see that our attitudes, rooted in beliefs that have been held unquestioned over the centuries, these attitudes are keeping us down, tying our feet to outmoded ways of life, while we struggle to keep pace with the rest of the world. It is not working, and we need to recognize the fact and urgently address the issue. Our attitude of resisting change, that is, refusing to change our attitude, is one which in my consideration contributes significantly to ensuring that we maintain as Africans the unenviable position of occupying the very last rungs of the ladder with regard to practically every single index of development. We are always at the bottom. For some strange reason, neither formal Western education nor the technological advancements around us have been able to free us from the shackles and tyranny of an unquestioning attitude towards what we consider to be our way of life, our culture, our traditions, and our customs. As if we are the only ones in the world that have customs and culture. Utterances such as the following are common in our daily experience. That is how it has always been done. It is our tradition and it cannot be altered. Or even, let us do it as it is normally done. I'm translating this one from Yoruba because this is what I grew up with. Let's do it as it is normally done, so that the outcome will be what it normally is. These are our constant companions at every stage of life, from conception to death. Rigid rules of behavior to be adhered to, and actions to be undertaken. For example, by a woman during her months of pregnancy, at a baby's naming ceremony, rites of circumcision, including of female children. When a woman loses her husband, this is how we do it. For marriage, burial, everything. The main problem with attitudes, of course, is that they are very selective. We hold on tightly to some things while we are willing to quickly let go of others. It is obvious that our lives today are much different from the lives of our parents, our grandparents, and great-grandparents. We have had to abandon some former ways of life, beliefs, customs, traditions, practices. For example, our attitude to the birth of twins has changed. Among the Yorubas, where they are considered to be special, it is no longer believed that the mothers of such children should roam the streets begging for alms. I remember vividly, while growing up in Ibadan, that women used to carry twins about singing, "Iya abeji kiyi o, oni elowo ebimo." This is what they were doing, they were meant to do. Culture dictated that they must carry those twins around the streets begging. The mother of twins is greeting you, she's saying, "May you be prosperous, may you have money, may you have many children." Nobody is doing that anymore. Among the ethnic people in the southeastern part of the country, where the birth of twins was considered an evil curse, and the babies were normally abandoned in the bush to starve to death or be eaten up by animals, such is no longer the case. Of course, it took the intervention of a young Scottish woman, Mary Slessor, who is said to have rescued hundreds of such babies and finally was able to influence the people and bring about a change in their beliefs and attitudes. So what then determines the attitudes which end up being changed and those that appear to be more resistant? In other words, what influences us in such a way that we are encouraged to change our minds, change our beliefs on certain issues, while we tend to dig in our heels on others, refusing to budge? I imagine that these and similar questions have preoccupied many a social scientist over the ages and will most likely continue to do so for as long as human beings exist. Not being a certified social scientist myself, I will not seek to venture too deeply into a terrain that may turn out not to be solid ground under my feet. Nonetheless, I have some ideas on the issue which I would like to present before you for consideration. It would appear that the attitudes that resist change are mostly those that would involve having a privileged individual or group give up part of that privilege. It is thus much easier to stop the killing of twins than to have men come to consider their wives as equal partners in a marriage, or for traditional rulers to dispense with serfs and praise singers groveling at their feet, or even for the wife of a governor to accept to be treated as other people during a church service, for that matter. I hope you know what I'm referring to. Killing twins in reality confers no particular privilege on anybody. The practice arose presumably out of a collective fear in the face of an occurrence that was seen as unusual. Multiple births in humans must not have been very common among the Ephics. But then, Mary Slessor still went ahead and rescued hundreds of them. So maybe it was indeed common. However, among the Yorubas, multiple births were common. In fact, there is a village where they said that about 70% of the population were twins. So you don't kill an entire village. So the issue is that we hold on to those ones where we have privileges and we refuse to change. Other instances of easily changed attitudes have to do with the adoption of new technologies resulting from the innovative and trailblazing activities of explorers and inventors. A good example of this would be the innovations which have taken place in the area of transportation, from traveling on foot to riding on animals, sailing in ships, then the subsequent invention of bicycles, cars, trains, aeroplanes. It is hard to imagine that anyone resisted these developments. Somebody will say, no, I must travel by, I left Ife this morning to come here. I didn't insist on traveling by foot, saying that because my great-great-great-grandparents traveled by foot, therefore I too must travel by foot. So the benefits of these advancements were obvious, and the only limitation to anybody adopting them would most likely be the question of costs. Can you afford it or not? And then end of story. A nagging question, however, is this. Why is it that technological advancements tended and somehow continue to come from a certain region of the world? What have Africans contributed to the global pool of technology? I know I'm not focusing squarely on gender issues all the time, but these are issues of attitude in a general sense that we must ask ourselves. Were we not all humans walking around on foot? How come some of us were able to go ahead and devise faster and more comfortable ways of traveling? Given that Africa is that region of the world that is most marked by the absence of technological creativity, there are terrible jokes about this sad phenomenon, which are usually told about us, and we even tell them about ourselves. I don't know how many of you have heard the joke of somebody who's trying to choose a brain there's a lab with jars of brains stored, okay, on shelves. So somebody comes, there's the brain of Einstein, the brain of well-known people, intelligent professors, and so on, So the person who is guiding this other one who has to make the choice, he stops before a particular jar and says, choose this one. It is brand new. It has not yet been used. And the label on it says African. Terrible joke, isn't it? Yes. But when are we going to make such things change? In the case of attitudes whose change would involve the loss of certain privileges by an individual or a group, the usual way such changes have been brought about in the history of humanity, it is through struggling, through fighting to overcome the status quo. Freedom from oppression is hardly ever handed down on a platter of gold. That is the reason the world has known untold wars, revolutions, and various forms of uprisings, from peasants seeking freedom from the tyranny of overlords and nobles in 18th century Europe, to the African slaves in North America demanding equal rights, to the former colonies of France and Great Britain in Africa and Asia, wresting themselves free of their colonial yoke and attaining independence, and to women's fights around the world for universal suffrage and general emancipation, and workers demanding shorter working hours, and so on. None could be achieved without a fight. It did not have to be a bloody affair, as in the case of the French Revolution, involving heads being chopped off at the guillotine, but usually there is a fight. If, as has been claimed above, negative attitudes which stand in the way of our development persist within the country, within the society, then it must be that those who suffer from such attitudes have not yet had the courage to stand up and the will to rise to fight against those attitudes. Or maybe more appropriately, because that is the pattern that we often see, leaders have not emerged to lead such protests and struggles. Because it's not usually the oppressed group that rises up, not always, but a leader, an individual, or a smaller group would arise to say, no, we must put an end to this thing. So I go to a certain way of being in the world, or a certain way of living. What does it take to upturn an undesirable set of circumstances? The obvious but fundamental answer to my mind is, first of all, the sheer belief that it can be done. That is, that those undesirable circumstances can be upturned, that one is not condemned to enduring them forever. This belief must be a strong one, not merely a mental assent, but a real conviction, a gripping conviction, which is ready to translate into action. And it's not given. You cannot believe so many people who come to me and say, just go and sit down. This is what you are trying to do. It can't be done. Is this not Nigeria? This is the way we are, and this is the way we will always be. I don't subscribe to that. So if you do not subscribe to that, then you have to. Your conviction must translate into action. Ever since I began to have the opportunity of traveling around the world and experiencing other societies and cultures, I have never ceased to be fascinated by the question of what could be identified as accounting for the differences noticeable from one place to another. The question has been addressed in various forms in my writing. For example, in the opening lines of my book called Daybreak Nigeria, This Nation Must Rise. I would like to quote from it. What do so many countries in the West do right? Or at least, what were they able to do so well in the past to so significantly improve the living standard of their population? How come several Asian countries are also succeeding in turning around their lot and bringing their populations into an era of productivity and prosperity? And why have we, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, been unable to do the same? What do we do wrong? Or what critical notions have we failed to comprehend, imbibe, and successfully apply, thereby ensuring that we remain the poorest, the most undeveloped, disorganized, the most unstable, most disease-ridden region of the world, with unacceptably low and arguably the most deplorable standards of living on the globe. These are the issues which the book was trying to grapple with. And how, maybe ultimately why, have others been able to build lasting structures, institutions, and systems that work fairly well, basically, almost regardless of the political leaning of their leaders at any given time. That is, in these countries, the streets will always be clean, whether the left is in power or the right. Water will flow through the taps. Electricity will be there. So, why does that happen? To my mind, these differences must have something to do with different ways of our being in the world. I think that because now I have to hurry over, the developments we see in other countries, they are brought about by human beings who act as agents through their creative, intellectual, and physical output. They work to change their own conditions of living. And that is what we too must do. Certainly, a kind of quality of human beings is required for transformation to occur, no matter what area we want that transformation to be. So let's go back to what we have said in the beginning, our traditional ways of being in the world. How do we characterize it? Using the Yoruba culture with which I'm very familiar, one could say that we Yorubas live in a world where things are given, they are determined. Among this group, the well-known concept of Ori, meaning head, is very important. So everything has to do with the head that we brought from heaven. If luck is Ori Buruku, good luck is Ori Rere, and so on and so on. So the Yorubas have a unique, but they are not unique. I'm sure other ethnic groups have similar ideas. And let me hasten to say that, many of us, though highly educated, still are very deeply embedded in these kinds of worldviews. Look at our African magic films. I have often had to ask people, in which world do you really live? And I ask this of academics. Okay? So because you operate at one level, everything is scientific, you calculate, you measure, you see cause and effect, and so on. But then you get back home, and you sit in front of your television and watch African Magic. Or when you fall ill, it's no longer the microbes and the whatever, and the germs. Then it becomes a remote control woman from the village. In which world are we really living? Are we living in the scientific world or in this African world? Let me rush to the end. I have a section on the challenge of sustainable development in nation building. I believe that you can infer a lot from what I have said so far. I will just go to the last few pages of my paper. I says we need thinkers and influencers. We need thinkers and influencers, and these are the ones that I call true leaders. Professor Yolu Kotun, who writes a Friday column in The Punch, once said that we have the misfortune in our country of having leaders, most of whom acceded to positions of leadership without having written anything down. So we don't know what they really think on issues. We have not read them. Their thoughts and ideas have not been documented. We don't know whether they are retrogressive or progressive and so on. Indeed, the 3-month campaign period that are also approved by INEC is not sufficient to really know our leaders. We do not believe that we need to interrogate those who seek public office and get them to engage with us in a meaningful way. Instead, we all want these jamborees where there is opportunity for distribution of stomach infrastructure. I have recently read the book La Révolution, written by the new French President, Emmanuel Macron, detailing his understanding of the challenges confronting the French people and their society at this time. It was written as he embarked upon his incredible campaign to contest the next presidency of France. It is a truly inspiring book for me. And I felt rather envious of the French people for having such an individual right now as their president. He argued powerfully and I believe convincingly that France needed to go in a different direction now. He challenged attitudes that he felt were not fundamentally French, which had crept into the society, while at the same time identifying the need to not get stuck in the mud, since the realities of 21st century are those of a world in a constant flux, and only those who are quick to adapt are going to move ahead. It seems to me that in order for a nation to truly develop, it is important to have an educated leadership. I'm not saying a schooled leadership, I'm saying an educated leadership. This is not to say, no, they don't need to be professors or doctors or whatever. What is required is that such people must be visionary, understanding how their nation intersects with the rest of the world, and conscious of the roles that different segments of the society play in ensuring the smooth functioning of the society. Leaders are needed who are convinced that the citizens are their nation's greatest assets, and they make it their duty to provide all that is necessary for them to develop the skills needed for the nation's development. What, for example, is the specific objective being pursued by various administrations in our states and even at the federal level? Okay? I'm saying, therefore, that we need an educated leadership. How much of the nation's resources are being expended on our current oil prospecting enterprise, for example, which may end up merely as a wild good chase? Does it matter that we are wasting large sums of money at a time when the country is in a recession? Who are those taking these decisions? And is it being taken? Are they being taken in the interest of the generality of the people or of a certain minority? That has mostly been our pattern. Those who have privilege versus those who do not. That is the way in which I have chosen to understand this. So my conclusion, it's been said that we live in a moral universe. Societies will reap the benefit of the moral choices that they make. And it is important for us in Nigeria to begin to recognize the need for morality in the conduct of our affairs, especially our public life. That is a major change of attitude that is required, because we don't believe that morality has relevance in public life. It's a major change of attitude that is required. Indeed, it might be the single most important one, for all other attitudes are subsumed under it. We do not seem to realize that when we permit, through our complacency or our apathy, our unquestioning attitude, the practice of immoral acts, we pay dearly for it down the line. When we don't admit the best candidates to study medicine in our universities, we will face the consequence in later years by having incompetent doctors run our hospitals. When we are slack in demanding moral accountability from the leaders entrusted with the running of our affairs, but instead allow them to loot our treasuries and steal our commonwealth, we pay the price by condemning ourselves to a substandard level of existence. Dilapidated schools, poorly equipped hospitals, bad roads, poor delivery of services, water, electricity. When our society does not ensure that there is equal opportunity and justice for all, for girls as well as for boys, but allow some who are powerful to have advantages, for people who are powerful to be above the law, we sow the seeds of discontent, which inevitably will result in a society racked with violence and insecurity. There is therefore an urgent need to return to sound values which will make us prosper again as a nation. And values are about morality. A society that will develop and make significant advancement must have a certain number of people who will be dissatisfied and uncomfortable with things as they are, and be willing to commit their time and their energies to doing something about it. They are the true leaders that Nigeria is waiting for. Then others will follow. I would just like to say that the fundamental attitudinal change we need in our nation right now is a moral one. If we continue to disregard and even despise those millions of Nigerians who are suffering because of the unjust system that we are running, children, young people, widows, the unemployed, we will never attain sustainable development. We will continue to inch our way forward, celebrating insignificant advancements. But even those will be seriously compromised by the price we will pay in terms of insecurity and constant restiveness in the country. The worrisome developments in the country at this time, with drums of war starting to be beaten all over the land, also afford us a singular opportunity to check some of our attitudes with respect to nation building. Can a nation be built on inequality and injustice? Again, we look to the leadership of the nation to provide a sincere, well-reasoned approach to tackling these challenges. As the saying goes, our attitude will determine our altitude. Will we fly as a nation, soaring like the eagle on our coat of arms, or will we sink this ship called Nigeria? Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, you deserve more than that. Put your hands together, put your hands together, put your hands together. That was a very well researched, well delivered lecture. Attitudinal change towards achieving sustainable development in nation building. Professor Mrs. Remi Sonaya. One more time, ladies and gentlemen. Put your hands together for this great woman, this great academic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much. There will be enough time to ask questions later. There will be enough time to ask questions later. We just had to ask her to hurry up a little bit because she still has so much to tell us, but time was definitely of the essence. Tracy.
We'll now go into another aspect, a topic that is very beneficial. I will not want to preempt the speaker, but we are going to be talking on balanced gender participation for sustainable democracy in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to make welcome Professor Friday Okonofor.
The chairman of this occasion, My Excellency, the First Lady of Edo State, will be represented by someone I've known for several years, the activist TVA, the Vice Chancellor of this University, Chris Pascal University, the PG of NEPA, Adebo in Town, and my very humble guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me rest on existing protocol, because I know that what will be more interesting in this presentation will be the questions I will answer. So I'm going to talk for just a few minutes and I'll wait your questions. The first thing to note is that Nigeria currently faces one of the most global times in its quest to attain development. We're trying to started democracy in the 1990s, but I can say that democracy is still, as a professional gynecologist, I can say that democracy is still pregnant. It hasn't been fully delivered yet. Because some of the principles that underpin democracy are not yet there. The principles for which democracy, my great friend, Professor Sonaya, who is also my colleague at people, my both students today have been very well, mentioned that we cannot have inequality and expect democracy to fester properly. Not only are women underrepresented in many facets of Nigerian democracy. Indeed, as I mentioned recently in a lecture at the Otafunawa World University, this country, democracy, is clapping with one hand. Remember very well that Abdullah, Bashir Abdullah once said, "Can anybody here clap with one hand?" The answer is no. We want to clap with two hands. And today, if you look at the architecture of democracy in Nigeria, evident that Nigeria is clapping with one hand. Surely this will not over well for this country's economic development. And I've seen Professor Sonaya talked about development. There's no way we can have the country clapping one hand and expect to get development. Now, the objectives of this short presentation are as follows. I'll provide a conceptual framework so you understand the reason why we need gender balance in political representation. Secondly, I will discuss how Nigeria compares to other countries. I'm not going to talk about what is in Nigeria. I'm going to talk about how Nigeria compares with other African countries in terms of political and gender representation in politics. And I'll provide some background reasons, and I'm sure you know the reasons, but I'll try to put them together so that you can see. And then also provide examples of countries that have gender participation in democracy and see and they confirm the fact that if you have a balance in democracy, then you will love faster than if you are not. And then I will make recommendations going forward. I expect that by 2019, this gender imbalance will be completely corrected, or to some extent corrected. So that for the going to another phase, we are halfway, in 2 years' time, we will be asked to vote. And I'm going to challenge women here that in 2019, women should vote for women. Am I correct? Yes. So let it be so. Now, according to Michelle Patel, and I want to also quote Professor Sonaya, women's participation in the political life of their countries is an essential condition for democracy and for development. It cannot be otherwise. Now, let me quickly tell you why it is important. Why gender balance in democracy is important. The principles of equal rights and equal opportunities underpin this discourse. And you know there are so many conventions that have been mentioned. CEDAW, for example, was adopted at the UN on 18th December 1979, and it was adopted by Nigeria on June 13th, 1985, which suggests that both men and women should have equal representation in all facets of life. Nigeria was a signatory nearly 2 years ago. So, and on the date, it appears that it did not done well at all, and I will show evidence to that effect later on. Article 7 of CEDAW requires all countries to take appropriate measures to eliminate discrimination against women in the political and public life of their countries. Remember, gender is being balanced, but here women are disadvantaged. So CEDAW specifically talks about women being equally represented in political governance. And then other international guidelines, AU Protocol and Convention, African Charter of Democracy, then the Goal 3 of the MPGs as well as the LPGs. The Beijing Conference on Women took place in 1995. I happened to have attended a conference, and it was a big plain load of women, led by Mrs. At that time, the wife of the vice president was the leader of the team, and I was the only man in the entire thing. So that's a part of that conference. And on that moment now, I cannot see any other reason why gender participation in politics has not happened. And today, this is still as it is, because at that conference, a lot of things were said, and women vowed that they will fight for their rights. Unfortunately, not only have men not supported them, women have not also been able to fight for their rights now and try and take it down. Now, what are the benefits of gender balance in political competition? It's not just a human rights issue, it's also an economic imperative. The World Bank recently estimated that Africa loses about $100 billion every year because of women's underrepresentation in political governance, decision making. And if you look at women who have been given the right opportunity, they've done extremely well. And I don't want to say that they've done better than men, but whatever positions are given to them, they've done extremely well. Therefore, if you decide not to give opportunity to such half of the population, so to say, it means that the country will be performing underperforming by just 50% of the population. In Rwanda and South Africa, the increased number of female lawmakers in parliament in those two countries led to progressive legislation on so many things that affect women, including rights, medical rights, things like violence against women, etc. We know that there are women in Nigerian parliament, but to what extent have they been able to make necessary change? We know that not too long ago we had ministries of women affairs in various parts of the country, not only at the federal government level, but also at the national level. To what extent have they been able to make some of these changes happen? Again, it's part of what we will discuss, that the fact that women have been doing some positions doesn't mean they are strong enough. They still need support of women. Value system that was organized, talked about, attitudes, belief systems, which affect both men and women, needs to change for them to be able to do things differently. Otherwise, we still have where we are. Now, women's political participation in Africa has been recognized by all African countries. United African Union recognizes that it is very important for all women to be in power, for women to be in power in comparison with men. Access to power and representation between men and women is, however, unequal across the continent. Some countries are doing better than others, and I will try and show some slides which suggest that Nigeria is doing very poorly compared to even smaller countries that have less economy, that has less resources. Nigeria is one of the least performing countries in terms of demographic representation of women. And I will show that by showing some of these slides. I don't know where you can see it. For example, this one talks about the representation of women in national parliaments. And I don't know where you can see it. Only about 4 countries have 40% of their parliament being women. And this is about 8% of all African countries. These countries are Rwanda, Seychelles, Senegal, and South Africa. Then another set of 8 countries have between 30 and 30% of their members being women, which comprises 16% of all African countries. Another round of our countries have about 20 and 29%, which constitutes 24%. And if you look at the bottom, Nigeria is to be able to confront our governments, our politicians, political office holders, so that we can do things differently. In terms of women in ministerial positions, this was in 2014, during the era of the last government. Between 20 and 30% of women were ministers in this country. Nigeria was third amongst the group of African countries listed. As well as other countries. So in terms of ministers being appointed, again, we are told that we are supposed to have about 5% of women being appointed in government. But here we are talking about between 20 and 13, and this is the best Nigeria ever been. Now, I don't know what it is, but I think it's much less than 30% in terms of women in Nigerian parliaments, Nigerian political positions. Again, with this women in ministerial position also have the power. They have the voice to talk compared to them. That's an issue that also needs to be discussed as well. Now, let's talk about, this is a table I drew up. I'm going to send this slide out, but it's very important for us to know how gender balance in political representation was called in Nigeria between 1999 to date. So, we talked about the presidency, the Senate, House of Representatives, governorship, deputy governor, and here we found out that, let us go to 2015. Number of seats, one president and one vice president. 0, Nigeria doesn't have one president and vice president. Senate, out of 109 senators in Nigeria, Nigeria has only 7 who are women. Today, 2015. In 2011, it was 8. That means the figure is decreasing rather than increasing. House of Representatives, we are supposed to have 260 members in House of Representatives. Nigeria today has only 15 women in House of Representatives. In 2011, there were 26 women in House of Representatives. In fact, I think that in 2003, there were 3 women. In 1999, there were 12 women. Now, we are 15. That means we are doing, less well than those people. Governorship, no. We have not had a single woman governor elected in power. We had one deputy governors. We have had one governor, but I don't think she was elected. I don't think she was elected in this dispensation in 1999. I think she came in through some measures. But between 1999 and today, I was not a woman. And I was almost thinking that if Taraba governor was a man, 2015, when the results have been announced, I was jumping all over the place. Only for me to hear later on that the thing has been resolved the way it is with women. So today we have not had a woman who has been elected governor. For deputy governors, I think we had one in 1999, we had 2 in 2003, in 2007 we had 6, in 2011 3, and now we have 4 deputy governors across the country, out of the 36 states in the country. Now the House of Assembly, 36 House of Assembly, and they are supposed to have 990 members to do it. Today we have only 46 women out of 990 in the entire country. And our dear Chief Ativi is the only one in those out of 7. So out of the total seats, available seats of 1,533 available in the political atmosphere of this country, women have just gotten 72, which is less than 2%. Those of you who are mathematicians can easily calculate that. So women are severely underrepresented in Nigerian democracy. I don't think it orders well for the future of this country's democracy. Now, so summary, progress has been slow compared to other parts of Africa. This is despite the fact that Section 40 of the Nigerian Constitution provides for the right of every Nigerian to participate in public life, while Section 42 also provides for freedom of discrimination. Obviously, the Nigerian democracy is creating a place. So, I believe very strongly that we cannot continue this way without reaching a key element in our national life. Now, why progress made in other countries? Let us talk about why progress has not been made. Let's first start by saying how progress made in other countries. The first were global efforts, which demanded increased participation of women in decision-making. Global efforts. And these global efforts are strong. But nationally, the efforts are not very strong. Then also, there have been some strong political will by some presidents who have decided that they must have women. And this is what I call presidential opportunity. Because really, it's not the president alone that will decide. The entire country should go forward and decide that women must be in a position. Then, efforts of some strong women movement. E.g. in Uganda and South Africa, we don't yet have such strong women movement in Nigeria. If there is, please let me know. I'm not aware of it. And then, finally, adoption of gender quotas by political parties. Quotas, and I'll talk about that every time. Because I believe that time has come for Nigeria to adopt quotas for us to be able to ensure that women are not left out in politics in this country. Now, there are some factors. I'm going to leave this slide. I'm not going to be lost and rushing, which have limited women's political participation in Nigeria Some of these include lack of resources, corrupting influences, discriminating laws and gender-blind policies, lack of political will, then lack of attitude or bad attitude, lack of internal democracy in most of the political parties. Factor for further male-dominated party executives, political violence, and the militarization of the political system. Let me talk about political violence. One of those who went to us with me, because the team that went to the conference was Dr. Dosunmu Awolowo, the daughter of Awolowo. And she went to that conference soon after she contested the presidency of this country. Around that same period, 1998, she contested. And that botched Abiola presidential election where Abiola was leaked out and so on. She contested. And so when I saw her, and it was really violent. So when I met her at Beijing, I said, are you going to contest again? He said, never, I'm not contesting again. I said, why? He said, because it was so violent. And she has said that no woman can survive politics in Nigeria as it is because of the violence that she felt. And in those days, violence was just little. But now, violence is something else. And I don't know how you can get a woman to become president or state governor without money, without being able to carry the gun. And I just talked to my friend a few days ago. I said, if a woman wanted to contest governorship with me, I would put a toy gun in my pocket and just show her to stop. Unfortunately, that's what it is. So, political violence is something that is limiting women's political participation in Nigeria. And unless this capitalism and money-making politics, sharing of formulas, and night campaigns, moving from house to house, and even ritualism, whereby you participate in rituals, and join some dance, join rituals, women are not going to be able to do that. And so those are factors which we have to consider very soon. Other factors include illegalities, rigging, oppression, manipulation, vote buying, vote merchandising, purchasing votes, sexual harassment, labeling and fear of stigmatization, illiteracy and humility. Now, this was an argument by someone in Sierra Leone I met at the conference in Ghana, where we were talking about politics, where women should get involved. And the same women were arguing that, well, it's difficult for parties to put women forward. So because men are much more persuasive, they are much more courageous, and they are better at this. Whereas women are often emotional, and they are not good enough for the roughness of political debates and so on. She put out an argument, and one said, another one said, people wanted to appoint women, not like women to appoint. And so, women were putting themselves down and saying that within the political barometer, they are not present. And in fact, these are the same arguments men use for not allowing women to declare their positions in democracy. Now, let me just quickly publish the results. These are the 4 key recommendations which are making for addressing gender imbalance, political representation within the context of Nigeria. First, I think we must adopt quotas. So I remember when I brought Chief Bishop of Washington to the election of women and politics here in the city. He invited, and then I invited the incoming governor, and as soon as President Obasanjo spoke, the incoming governor got up and said, no, politics and power can never come down, carry fighting for it, something like that. He said that if women want power, they have to fight for it. That was it. And so that definitely dawned on me that it's not going to be easy for somebody to become governor to stay without fighting for it. And therefore, I think we must think about quotas. Saying that some quotas must be allocated to women at some level for them to be able to address this problem of gender equality. Then we also have to address national level factors. We have to empower, educate, and support women. And I'm now calling on a women's movement. It's too late to come. This is that 2019 is coming. I'm calling for a movement of women in democracy, what I call women. Women. Sorry, I said women, that's why women. And I'm going to pursue this really. I'm not saying this just because I'm making the presentation. The time has come when women must encourage to get the right women and for them to lobby to create opportunities for white women in politics. Now, benefits of the gender proposal is ensures fiscal mass for women, better able to defend policy, and female legislators are more committed to peace. Look at for peace these days. Every time I was coming back this morning, I came back from the UK this morning, and I brought a newspaper. Every single page was a video report. Oh, this person has been, oh, this man is said. I couldn't believe they brought the last video. This, I've never seen such a country. You go to see that, you know how somebody's neck has been fought with a candy stone, how God is doing all that. You wonder, are we in a country? So the time has come, and when you listen to legislators talking, they are still shouting for. They are not shouting peace. I believe that if women are brought on board, they will talk to us. As of podcast, there are 35 countries in Africa that have adopted gender quotas, whereas only 19 countries have not. And Nigeria is one of those countries. This is on the right-hand corner that hasn't adopted quotas. Morocco, for example, or Nigeria has reserved. Then, if you go to the